I have found so much joy in this work. And that's really what I want for everyone, is to be able to find the joy in confronting the truth and finding freedom through that.
This podcast encourages and empowers you to create your own unique real story, develop your own unique real statement, and discover your own unique real self. The power is yours. Good afternoon, Alethea Cheng Fitzpatrick. Previously, episode 476 of the 12-Minute Convos. It has been just 2 years, 8 months, 21 days, and 1 hour since we last recorded.
I just want to say to the audience, take a look at your camera a little differently and see if you can use it to be present and in the moment and find that extraordinary within the ordinary.
That was then. This is now. Alethea, how are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I am good. That is very specific because I was wondering to myself how long it had been. So you know exactly how long it's been. That's great.
Thankfully, the calendar never lies, doesn't
it? No, it does not.
Yeah. So how are things going? What's up in your world? What's new?
Everything is good. And you know what? Since we spoke, quite a bit is new. I'm actually now doing something a little bit different to what I was doing before.
All right. So a Photosanity is not there anymore. Is it still there?
So Photosanity is now on the back burner, pretty much closed. I mean, the website is still there, but I have shifted and I'm now a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant.
Ooh la la. Sounds huge.
And there is a connection. It sounds like there isn't, but there is a little bit of a connection. So
yeah, tell us, how did you connect that?
So it's a long story, so I'm trying to think in 12 minutes how much of it I can tell. But really, what I've realized is a through line through my entire career, because I was also an architect in the past. So I've gone through a few different pivots. But for me, the through line has been that I'm really passionate about helping people, teams, and organizations shift culture through inclusion and belonging so that everyone can do their best work. And so in architecture, I used to do that with my clients. I would do a lot of upfront workplace strategy work, talking with companies about what their culture is, what they need to do their best work, where the shifts need to be. And then as an architect, I would design a space. I'd be part of a project team designing a space to create that shift in culture. Now, as a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, I'm really doing that through designing of the organization and programs and training and facilitation and compensations, and also looking at processes and procedures and policies. And where photography comes in is that really what I've realized is, and I didn't necessarily have the language for it, but really for me, photography can be a great tool for inclusion as well. So when inclusion is that you can show up as your full self and have belonging and be really valued for who you are, photography can help us create that inclusion for ourselves and for others, for our kids, because I did a lot in terms of photographing your kids, but really photography can be a way of being really present and really being present to all of your emotions, and the joy in being present to all of your emotions. So that to me ultimately is what inclusion is as well, is really being able to be your true self, but understanding that there are systemic and institutional barriers for some of us more than others that get in the way of doing that. And how can we remove those obstacles?
Wow, that's pretty deep stuff there. Yeah, no, that's great. So you've been able to do this. Are you working with a company or are you individual? Are you consulting?
So I'm an independent consultant. I have also done some work through some different companies that I consult for. And I'm sort of in the process of potentially kind of building a consulting practice that doesn't just include me. So I really love working with others. And so with some of my current clients now, I'm starting to bring in co-facilitators and looking at, how I can really do this in a collaborative way, because that's really important to me.
That's wonderful. That is beautiful. It brings me back to your earliest childhood memory, the picture of both you there sitting and your sister and mother. The inclusion, again, is in the theme of the metaphoric picture. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that, for me, I grew up in the south of England. It was very white. So I'm a British-born Chinese American. So I was born in England, the immigrant daughter of immigrant parents. So my parents grew up in Hong Kong. I grew up in the south of England, and it was very, very lovely people, but very homogenous, very white. And so for me, I've sort of been unpacking that experience of growing up where I was in certain respects very different and had a very different background and looked different to everyone else around me. And so, I think it's that search for belonging that we all, it's part of being human as well, is that we all crave that belonging, but we want to belong for who we are. We don't want to have to sort of assimilate and blend in order to belong. So that's a lot of what I explored in my photographs, is still continue to do so, is kind of that idea of identity and culture and where we fit into that.
Yeah, your family played a major part of the decision of doing what you did with photography. You had two boys that were 7 and 4 back then, so we're looking at possibly almost 10, possibly almost
10 and 7. They're 10 and 7 now.
Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So there we go. So how has what you are doing now impacted them?
Well, my husband and I made a decision to, stay in Brooklyn, grow our family in Brooklyn, which does have a lot of diversity, a lot more diversity than certainly I grew up with. At the same time, it's still a very segregated city, New York City. So we've made decisions to, the boys go to a school that has diversity as part of their mandate. And so it is much more racially diverse than anything that I grew up with. And they've had teachers from pre-K who are teachers of color, African American, Asian. I never had that. I didn't have a non-white teacher until I was in high school. But my husband grew up in Queens, so he grew up actually around a lot more diversity than I did. And so that has, our backgrounds and our experiences growing up, but also the work that I do has made that an important part of how we've decided and where we've decided that we want to bring our kids up. And I have conversations with my kids all the time about this, to the point where they sometimes roll their eyes, my 10-year-old especially. But even in Brooklyn, even in their diverse school, issues come up, and they're navigating that. And we don't, as a society, really have a lot of well-known, commonly used tools for navigating that. So talking about race is still very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And so it comes up in their daily lives. And I've learned a lot from helping them to navigate that.
That's wonderful. So where's the best place for someone that's listening to connect with you?
My website right now is at aletheafitzpatrick.com, and I'm always happy to connect on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, people should definitely feel free to look me up. I always love to chat with new people.
That was wonderful. Now, in the process of what it has taken to create race from humanity, there's the conversation of death, right? So the beginning is humanity and the fullness thereof, but part of the parcel that isn't discussed many times is the conversation of death. Have you had that conversation, the conversation of I am going to die?
Yes, I have had that conversation. I mean, I think especially as I get older, as I see, my parents get older, both my parents are still alive and both my husband's parents are still alive. So we're fortunate in that respect. I'm curious as to the connection for you between death and race. That's very interesting to me. I can see a few different ways, but
I can see many ways immediately. But I can answer that and say most definitely what I have been seeing is individuals that, because they're not reflecting on the fact that they're going to die, that the race scenario is something that is focused on, but open-ended, not to the part and point that we're going to die. We should end this now. Like, we're going to die. We're all going to die. So yeah, from that perspective.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't thought about it specifically from that perspective, but I do think about it a lot in terms of legacy, and also certainly in the US, with the history in this country, which is basically a country founded on slavery and genocide. And where we are now is built on hundreds of years of, a system being built and constructed. And so it is going to take a long time to dismantle that. And so I've definitely thought about how this may sound depressing, but to me it's actually not as depressing as it sounds. But I don't really have an expectation that I'm going to see what I want to see in my lifetime. And I don't even know if my kids will see it in their lifetime. I don't really know how long it's going to take, but I think we're a long way off. And for me, what that creates is, I think that can be disheartening, but for me, that means that I know I'm going to be working on this for the rest of my life.
Which is intriguing. Wow. I think that adds to the character of who you are representing, in that, again, the power of that conversation gives you the reality check and thus the ability to function balanced?
Yeah, because I think that if we don't, for me anyway, facing that truth has helped me, maintain a sense of balance and almost a sense of calmness and to be able to look at the long view and not be reactive because this is not something that we're going to fix overnight. And so it's helped me kind of develop the resilience to keep moving forward.
That's amazing. Well, my friend, I want to say thank you because it gives a great joy, both to me and those listening, I believe, to listen to an individual who has made their choices and stuck to it, despite the changes in what you're doing, specifically from being the photographer coach and helping parents to now helping institutions and organizations. I think there is a theme of support. And you being passionate about being supportive to the greater good. So I appreciate that. I thank you for that. Again, I'm like the podcast accountability partner here, stepping in and saying, Alethea, you're doing what you said you would do. But it's
Thank you.
You're very welcome. In closing, my friend, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
No, I like that you mentioned joy because it sounds kind of funny, but I have found so much joy in this work. And that's really what I want for everyone, is to be able to find the joy in confronting the truth and finding freedom through that.
Alethea, again, a treasure, a pleasure, I treasure. My friend, thank you for being on what is inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. This podcast is produced by Pod Edits. Visit podedits.com for professional podcast publishing.